Hello, how are you today? Since in my last video I told you that one of the things that I most like to do in my life is to travel, my idea is that during my videos I will show some images and places that I have visited. At the moment I live in New Zealand, so most of these videos and places will be in New Zealand. But how and why did I move from Brazil to New Zealand? This is the story I would like to share in today's video. And this story started a long time ago, in 2002, when I was only 15 years old. But no, I didn't move into New Zealand in 2002. But in 2002, something very special happened. I went to the cinema to watch The Lord of the Rings, and I was very surprised and impressed by the landscapes that I saw on that movie. Later on, I learned that those landscapes were in New Zealand. So since that time, I really wished to visit New Zealand. But I am from a very poor family, so I didn't have money at all to travel to New Zealand. Then, 16 years later, when I was 31 and finally had enough money to visit another country overseas and learn English, I went to an agency in Brazil because I would like to do an exchange and stay in another country for a few weeks to study and learn English. In Brazil, we don't learn English in schools. In Brazil, actually, only 3% of the population, a population of 210 million people, only 3% of Brazilians can speak English. And you know why? Because to learn English in Brazil, you need to pay for private classes, and they are very expensive. So basically, only rich people learn English in Brazil because they can afford the costs of private lessons. That was not my case. So in 2018, when I was 31 years old, I had enough money to travel overseas and learn English. But I had a job in Brazil, so I couldn't stay for a long time in another country. So I took an annual leave of 4 weeks, and that would be the time I would have to be in another country and study English. At the time, I was thinking about to travel to Canada because I had two friends that did this. They went to Canada to study English and they liked very much. So I was thinking about travel to Canada actually. But then, in the same period, I went to an optometrist to check my eyes and make sure that everything was good. And the doctor told me that her daughter went to New Zealand to study English. And this for me was perfect because I really wanted to travel overseas to study English, and I always wanted to visit New Zealand. I don't know why I didn't realize that before, but when she said that, it was perfect to me. So the only thing I was thinking is that, well, let's see if go to New Zealand is not too much more expensive than going to Canada. So when I went to the agents, I asked, okay, I want to do an exchange, I want to go overseas to study English, I can stay there during 4 weeks, I was thinking about to go to Canada, but now I really would like to go to New Zealand. So what is the difference between them in terms of price? And actually, from Brazil to New Zealand at the time, it was cheaper than going to Canada. So I chose New Zealand. This was still in 2018, but I had to start paying for this in advance, so every month I was paying a little bit until 2019 when I would actually travel to New Zealand. In September 2018, an interesting thought came to my mind because at the time I was working for a multinational company in Brazil and I knew they had factories all around the world, so I thought, well, maybe they have a factory in New Zealand and I could visit them and see if they are doing something better than us here in Brazil, and perhaps I can learn something with them and bring it to Brazil. So in the intranet, I searched for the supply chain manager of New Zealand and tried to contact him. I actually found him. His name is Ben Rowan. This was in September 2018, remember that? So I sent him an email and I told him, of course I introduced myself and I said, well, in June 2019 I'm going to travel to New Zealand. I will be there during 4 weeks studying English and I would love to visit you guys if you can, if you have time for me, and see how the things works. And he didn't reply to my email. Then in May 2019, I tried to contact him again and I said, well, I'm going anyway. I will be there during 4 weeks in June. If you can, I would love to visit you. This is my phone number. You can either contact me by email or you can text me. I use WhatsApp. So anything that works for you, I would be really grateful. But he didn't reply again. So when I arrived in New Zealand, I started to study English and I was really learning. Believe it or not, my English was even worse than now. And I was loving New Zealand. I liked very much the city, the people, the landscapes, everything was so amazing for me. And after 1 week in New Zealand, I already didn't want to go back to Brazil. I really didn't want to go back to Brazil. I loved the country and I wished I could stay in New Zealand and work in New Zealand and live in New Zealand. But for us Brazilians, it's not easy to get a visa and move to another countries like USA, Canada, Europe, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, unless you are rich, I believe. At the time, I was doing my English course in New Zealand and I was living in a family's house, a Kiwi family or New Zealander family in New Zealand, which we call homestay. So I was basically living in this family's house and studying English. And the lady, the house's owner, she played violin in a church. And one day she invited me to go to the church if I would like to go and see how it is and see her playing violin there. And I was really happy with this invitation because I am Christian. I have been Christian my whole life. So it would be amazing for me to visit her church. And I remember when I visited this church, when I arrived there, it was so amazing. The church was huge and beautiful and they were singing and I really had goosebumps. And I also remember I cried a lot. It was really emotional for me. Well, Latin people normally are very emotional people. And during that time I was there and praying, I remember I was talking to God, I was talking to Jesus, and I was saying, I don't want to go back to Brazil. I don't know how, but I really want to stay here. I want to work here. I want to live here. I don't want to go back to Brazil. I know I need to go. I have my job in Brazil. I don't have a visa to stay here, but I really wish I could live here. A few days later, finally Ben sent me a message on WhatsApp and he said something like, "Hello mate, are you still here?" And I was really happy when I saw his message and I said, yes, I'm still here and I would love to visit you guys if you can. And he said, yes, you can come. And he sent me the address and the place was very far from the place where I was living. I remember it was really hard for me to go to that place when the factory is, but I went there. And Ben was always really nice, always smiling, always nice. I remember since we started our conversation, I told him, look, I'm still learning English. I'm sure I will not understand everything you say. Sometimes I will try to say something, but I don't know how to say. So I'm sorry for that. And he said, no, we are fine. Don't worry about this. And then we started walking through the factory and he was showing me everything and I was really happy and excited about everything that was happening. And then when we were always finishing the tour, I told him, well, one day I want to live in New Zealand. And I think he didn't understand very well why I said like that, one day. And he asked me, well, but why do you say one day? I mean, why not now? And I was trying to explain to him how hard it was for us Brazilians to get a visa to move to New Zealand. because he is from England. So for him, it was much easier when he decided to move from England to New Zealand, but for Brazilians, it's not like that. We need visa and it's not easy to get a visa. So I was trying to explain it to him, and I remember one thing I said was, in my case, I believe the best option would be if I have a job offer. Because if I have a job offer, I can use this job offer and request a work visa. And this would work, I believe. So, even with my very poor English, Ben understood my situation. Then he invited me to drink a coffee and we went to the cafeteria in the factory. And when we were there, just talking, Ben called her boss to join us, but I didn't realize that. She joined us and we were talking about my situation, that I was working for the same company in Brazil for over 10 years, but I had a dream to move to New Zealand one day. But for me, it was just an informal conversation. But when she left us, Ben told me, look, we are actually looking for someone for a role we have available. Not here, it's not in this plant, but we have another plant in South Island and we are looking for a materials planner. So perhaps you could try to get this role and be part of our team. I was very surprised, but at the same time very happy when he told me that. And I said, yes, of course, sure, I would love that. And he said, well, I can't promise anything, but we can try. We have another people to interview, but we can have an interview with you as well and see how things go. And I will never forget that. Ben was really nice with me, and this opportunity changed my life forever. Because after that, I went back home and I was locked in my room during 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, preparing a PowerPoint presentation because I had no skills to speak in English and even harder to speak in English in an interview. So what I thought was, well, maybe if I prepare a PowerPoint presentation and they allow me to show this, it will be easier for me to explain my skills, to explain my experiences in Brazil and show them what I know. So I did that, and during the following week they called me to go back in the factory and have this interview. And I had the interview with Ben and his boss. They allowed me to show my PowerPoint presentation in my laptop, and I was trying to explain to them what was my job in Brazil, what I learned during the last 10 years working for that company. I believe they were happy enough with what I showed them. Then I went back home, and one thing I remember very well, when I left them after the interview, Ben asked me how I would go back home because I didn't know where I should get the bus. I didn't even know if we still had the bus at that time of the day. And Ben was so nice and so kind that he called a Uber and paid the Uber for me. So I went back home. I didn't know what would happen, but during the week they contacted me again for another interview. So I went back to the factory one more time, and on that time I was having an interview with another manager and the HR team. So once again, I was very nervous. I didn't speak English well. It was really tough, but they were always very nice and very patient with me. So I went back home, and that was the time to go back to Brazil. I really didn't want to go back to Brazil, but at least I had hope because I thought that I had a chance to get this job offer and move from Brazil to New Zealand. So I arrived in Brazil in early July 2019, and 2 weeks later they finally called me. They told me I was approved in their interview and they would like to send me a job offer. I was so happy and so excited. I remember I cried a lot when I got this news because at the time I was already 32 years old, and it was the first time in my whole life that a dream was coming true. It was the first dream I achieved in my whole life. I will be forever grateful to Ben, and I am happy to say that we are still friends. and I will be his friend forever. So in September 2019, I moved from Brazil to a small city in South Island of New Zealand, a city with 5,000 people, and that during the winter sometimes we have temperatures like minus 15 degrees. But even though I have always been very happy and very grateful to have this opportunity to live in such an amazing country. I really love to live in New Zealand. And as you know, in early 2020, all the countries were locked. So everything that happened for me was in the perfect time. I have been living in New Zealand since, and that's why during my videos you will see lots of New Zealand's places and landscapes. These stories always shows me how important it is to be prepared and to have faith that good things can happen and good people like Ben was for me can come to our lives. He really was like a guardian angel that God sent to my life, and he is such a nice person. As I said, he is still my friend and I like him very much. I'm grateful to him very much. So sometimes you will meet good people that can help you to achieve your dreams. You just need to be prepared and have faith, because if you are a good person, you will attract good people to your life as well. I hope you enjoyed this story and this video, and I see you next week. Thank you very much for your time. See ya. Bye bye.